All right. So, I want to open today's review with a reading of an important poem to the overall themes of this uh, to this movie. It was written from William Blake, The Tiger. We do hear references, and it's important to know this before we really get into this. The Tiger. Tiger, tiger, burning bright in the forests of the night, what immortal hand or eye could frame thy fearful symmetry? In what distant deeps or skies burnt the fire of thine eyes? On what wings dare he aspire? What the hand dare seize the fire? And what shoulder and what art could twist the sinews of thy heart? And when thy heart began to beat, what dread hand and what dread feet? What the hammer, what the chain? In what furnace was thy brain? What the anvil, what dread grasp dare its deadly terrors clasp? When the stars threw down their spears and watered heaven with their tears, did he smile his work to see? Did he who made the lamb make thee? Tiger, tiger, burning bright in the forests of the night, what immortal hand or eye dare frame thy fearful symmetry? Again, The Tiger by William Blake. Yeah, which is an interesting theme. It just how, especially since it's a paired poem by the same author with The Lamb, which is basically a story of the monster and his wife. So he was so in love with her, but it's such a difference. You know, he's a monster and loves her, but is a monster, and she's so sweet and just a lamb, and so it's like this dichotomy of you know of creation is a thing.
Kind of Beauty and the Beast, if you think about it.
A little bit, but not.
Without
With,
the kidnapping and
yeah,
Stockholm syndrome.
yeah, that it definitely is better in that regard. um, and so, but it's an interesting movie. It's for a while there at the beginning, like there was initially just trying to just being media aware whether what was going to happen before we start finding out that no, this is all real. Like one of my initial thoughts was, wait, is this all in the kid's head, like as a way of sort of covering up for what into his own mind what happened, and he's actually is doing this, but we get too much evidence and too much information that no, this what is happening, what we're seeing is actually happening. um
At what point did you realize that it was?
well,
Oh,
it might have been the second or third killing or something like that. Like the first one I think was the that we see is the first one we see is they go ice fishing.
mm-hmm.
That one I wasn't sure, like, because it just as a okay, it could be this, but it could also be a twist.
Mm-hmm.
And it's an independent film, and they have to do a lot more lifting with their story and what they're actually putting into the film instead of big graphics
Big,
and such. Yeah, they
big
can't.
budget
Yeah,
explosions.
yeah, they can't cover up stuff with the explosions, which you know, independent films have the advantage of they're cheaper, so they can take more risks, and it doesn't take a lot to get back what they put in.
Yeah.
And
You don't have to be a big blockbuster hit to recomp what you spend.
Yeah, I remember something like it was like a little over $1 million or something. I forget what it was. It wasn't a lot. The budget for this thing was next to nothing. And so
I mean, also, it's kind of like The Man Who Fell to Earth, which is another one we should do, where it's more character based than like visual based. Like the bulk of the story is the characters.
yeah. And yeah, this story story especially does a lot with character. And so yeah, at the end you get some special effects. But there's such a end of the story payoff than a patch over things
Mm-hmm.
to make it look better.
And even the end one, really the only special effects they really did in this was the alien himself.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. The alien at the end. Everything else is very practical, is very character based. Like all the black oily substance. Well, that's just a black oily substance. They just put it over there.
Exactly.
Like they were creative and used a good amount of just okay. Let's just practically film the scene because we don't need to cover up what we're doing with a lot of flashy stuff. This is just, which is an interesting thing that we don't see a lot of, or I don't see a lot of, they don't advertise it very well. Are, big companies taking shots with cheaper movies, just like, okay, we'll put out this movie. It's going to be cheaper. And we're going to
I think they don't spend as much on advertising for the smaller film because they don't expect to make as much.
Perhaps, but you expect to see it at some point and hear about it.
I honestly, the only reason I heard of this movie was I think I was searching IMDb for something. And I skimmed across it from one of the actors or something.
Probably Lloyd, given.
Maybe it might have been Lloyd, but it might have also been one of the other characters. I think it was like the mom, maybe, because I saw her in something else, and I was like, she looks familiar, or whoever it was.
Yeah.
Where do I know them from?
Yeah. Yeah, which Lloyd does a great job here, usually does. But he's basically doing what he wants to do, I think, at this point. Like, and this was when was this, 2016?
Something like that. It was a while ago.
Yeah, so, like, anything he does at this point, I'm just taking as bonus because he could probably just stop if he wanted to. He could just go, you know what? No, I'm gonna sit at my nice house, rest, relax, enjoy these years that I have left. But he's probably only just. This is one I want to do at this point, like, because if he wants to go, he wants to make money. Well, he can do that probably at any time he wants. But at this point,
I think it's also a fun character too.
It's very different.
The unimposing old grandpa type. Who's like, can you teach me how to text my wife in a picture? And he's a monster who's stealing body parts.
Yeah, it's it's a very interesting, and to be honest, for him, because of how actually little you know, there's not a lot of complex scenes in this movie. It's like, in terms of, shooting, or, it doesn't look very complicated, or else, like, not in a bad way, but just like, to show what you need to show, it doesn't take a lot. Like, there's no fancy camera angles, or we need to get the shot from 6 different angles to get this right. Like, no, this is a fairly straightforward movie in terms of what you need to shoot. Not that the cinematography was bad. It did what it was supposed to do. Well, everything makes sense.
It's like a YouTube channel I watch, Cinema Therapy. One of the guys always says that the most important scenes in a film are usually the face. It's usually just one actor playing off of another.
Yeah, and that's
like, and you could get the most emotion, the most story out of just expressions and good acting. You don't need all the CGI and the explosions and all that jazz.
Yeah, and most of this I can't imagine this took too long to film, just because it's very simple. In terms of how it's set up, the thing that took the longest was probably getting the special effect at the end. Mm-hmm. That was about it. That might have taken as long as it did to film the rest of the movie, because you could just, like, they were just in a small town. They didn't have to shoot around anything. They just got a small town, rented it out in the middle of winter, and then just filmed. You could just film and film and film and film, because you're not going to interrupt anything, because it's a small town. There's nothing happening. So, and none of the shots are, we got to get 6 different shots, or, all this stuff. No, it's just, it's just, they're simpler shots, but they do what they're supposed to do. They're mm-hmm. good selections, like you said. What else?
And I thought the cinematography, the simplicity of it, was really well done. I mean, it was really clean. And you could tell it was a like a more private film rather than a like high-end, blockbuster film. Based on the cinematography itself, like, it looks more hand cam than it does like sitting on those trolleys and all that jazz. And I think it makes it feel more real that way.
Yeah, it the blockbusters do tend to go a bit,
too far.
They go a little crazy with the cinematography, but they're also on a bigger budget, and they're like, we got to make it look good, so we got to do all this fancy cinematography. Which, for some shows, for some movies, you kind of need good cinematography to capture, like, especially action stuff.
Exactly.
This isn't particularly actiony. When it does have action, it's not supposed to be cool. It's supposed to be disturbing, and having that, and it's also mostly supposed to be done from the perspective of the kid. And if it's mostly from his perspective, having a single focus, pulling on just what's going on in front of him, and having kind of a stationary thing where he is looking at what he's looking at, is, is more disturbing in that way.
And more engaging.
Yeah.
That's true.
It looks like you feel more like you're seeing it from the kid's perspective.
Yes.
Like, and that makes it even creepier because you're not given sort of that third person omniscient camera. It's you are
Yes.
looking how he is looking at that thing. Like the whole first murder is basically shot for the most part, if I remember correctly, from his perspective. He's hiding in the
Yep.
trees and he is just watching this thing happen. It's a straight cam. It's at a distance. So normally
it's
that
a
would be a
little
bad
lower
thing.
down like he was, and it's lowered down like he was crouching. So it gives you his direct perspective.
Yeah, normally putting your subject matter so far away would be a stable cam so far away would be a problem, but in this case it's the right decision because it gives you his perspective. He's a ways away, so he's not seeing it. It's at a distance, so he's not seeing it like super detailed, and you're not seeing it from a third person. This is important that you see it from his point of view, from a ways away, watching. And
Yes.
and so I think it does a good job of doing that. And I love this is a, the shooting location was well picked because it's very much like this is a small town. Like you've seen these sorts of buildings in a small town. You've seen this sort of space in a small town because it is a small town.
Yes.
Like it's got some authenticity. It makes sense that this is how it is. And also why he would want to settle down in a small town, because it would take the heat off. Because you've got more people who know who you are, but there are fewer eyes upon you, and you have more times at night where there's nobody hanging around. But
On
you
the
also,
other,
on the other hand, everybody knows who you are, and so if you do something and somebody does see you, you've got to get them as well, because it's not
not
that
only
guy.
that, but in a big town, if somebody goes missing, nobody's going to notice.
Yeah. And
Like, people go missing all the time in big cities, and nobody bats an eye. The
yeah.
missing persons for, like, Chicago is probably immense. And yet, in the suburbs or a small town, you're going to notice. Even if it's just that homeless guy who lives on the street corner, you're going to notice them missing because, hey, I haven't seen that dude around for a while. I wonder what happened to him.
Yeah, and on the flip side of that is if somebody does see you, it's not it was a 6'3" guy with black hair, and it's not gonna be that. It's gonna be, that was Joe.
Yes.
So that's the other side of that. It does allow you a lot more freedom in that if you're doing the things he's doing, that you're not going to, you're going to have some more time at night
eyes on him.
Yeah, you're going to have fewer eyes on you, but if those eyes catch you, you're screwed. But then again, it's also one of those things where who would believe? Nobody. You could just straight up say to them, nobody will believe you. You have this, you could, if there's no cameras around and it's just one guy, you could just say, nobody will believe you. Even if you tell them that I did this, nobody will believe you.
I'm just a sweet old man, and you're a crazy psycho who's going to therapy because you might become a serial killer.
Yeah.
Who do you think they're going to believe?
Sweet old man or the sociopath? It's like...
I think he's a psychopath, not a sociopath.
No, I think I looked at the thing because it was, and I remember it being he was sociopath.
Because if I remember correctly, the main difference between a psycho and a socio is a psychopath is born with that neurodivergency, and a sociopath is sort of numbed to it due to childhood trauma or past
Let's see.
kind of like the difference between I just like killing things
Has
and
been diagnosed as a sociopath.
okay,
Yeah.
because he seems to be more of a psychopath to
Yeah,
me.
it's a mental health condition characterized by persistent antisocial behavior, impaired empathy and remorse, and bold, disinhibited, and egotistical traits. Different conceptions of psychopathy have been. It might be a subheading of.
Yeah,
It's a subheading of psychopathy.
well, they are both part. It's kind of like Asperger's versus autism. It's part of the spectrum of antisocial personality disorder. They're two different subtitles of subheadings of it. So sociopath is usually made in some way, due to childhood trauma, numbing them to their empathy. And psychopath is you could have the purest leave it to beaver home life, but your brain is just wired differently. And actually, statistically speaking, 1 in 4 people are some form of psychopath.
I thought that was 1 in 100 was the psychopathy. It wasn't 1 in 4.
Well, no, it's but I think it was have some form of it, but it's 1 in 100 are like real, like full on psychos.
If you want to find the
just
psychopath,
like autism, huh?
If you want to find the psychopath, just fill a room with people and ask everybody to raise their hand who likes oatmeal raisin cookies. If they raise their hands, they're psychopaths.
Hey, I mean,
Liking oatmeal raisin cookies doesn't make you a psychopath.
I mean,
yes, it does.
I like oatmeal raisin cookies.
Psychopath.
I'm not denying being a psychopath, but not because I like oatmeal raisin cookies. But actually, it's just, certain characteristics of it's a spectrum, just like autism or ADHD or any other neurodivergence. It's doesn't mean you're going to try to kill people. It doesn't even mean you want to kill people. It just means you don't have that same type of empathy. You don't feel the same way normal, quote unquote, normal people do. Like, most of the time, it's just you view things from a more self-centric viewpoint. You could even exhibit empathy, but in a less defined way. Like, you can feel genuine care for somebody or be genuinely concerned for somebody, but not for, like, you don't actually feel so much as you show the concern because that's what's expected of you. If that makes sense.
Oh, and coming back to the budget I was talking about earlier, now I've got Wikipedia up. It was 1.45 million, so this was a fairly comparatively cheap film to make. Comparatively, compared to what, a lot of them going into the 100 million, 200, 300 million now. It's like, nope, this is $1 million, which I imagine a good chunk of that was Lloyd's salary and the effect at the end. Everything else was pretty cheap.
I was gonna say, like, and of that million, like, a couple 100,000 was Lloyd himself.
Yeah. The cheap site. Not huge name actors outside of Lloyd himself. And like only 4 of them even have a Wikipedia page. Well, 5 of them have a Wikipedia Wikipedia page. All the rest of the main cast this is pretty much all they've done, so they don't have a Wikipedia page already
Hey,
done,
gotta
I
get your
think.
foot through the door somehow.
Yeah. Oh, I'm not saying
Hey. It's better than Piranaconda, okay? Or
But
Sharknado.
hey, those
Or
are Sharknado is a classic.
how about Piranaconda?
I don't know that one.
It's another one of those sci-fi movies.
Nah.
You know, Sci-Fi Channel.
yeah.
Alright.
Let's see.
Or what was the other one? Like giant octopus versus pterodactyl or some shit.
Sci-fi movies have always been have a special place in my heart. They're so bad, but they're good.
Actually, Animal Planet did their own version of one. It was called Lamprey's Summer of Blood or something, where it was about these lampreys that snuck through the Great Lakes into this town through its reservoirs or something. I think it was somewhere in Chicago, like Chicago suburbs or something, and started like killing swimmers and stuff. It was so cheesy. It actually had what's his name, the river monster guy, Jeremy Wade.
But yeah, there weren't a lot of big names here. I find it interesting that it was also the Irish Film Board that was party to this, but okay.
What do you have against the Irish?
I don't have anything against the Irish. It just seems like a weird choice for them to pay something in Midwestern America. But I'm not saying, you shouldn't have done that. No, it's just sort of a weird choice. I don't know. I would think they would stick to Ireland, filming stuff in Ireland to build up. The Irish Film Board would trying to build up the Irish film process, and so you would film in Ireland to build up that. But I don't know how it works. I'm not an expert. Not gonna complain. Just saying it was a little weird. It seemed for me. But
hey, it was a good movie. I don't care who made it.
yeah, I'm not. Yeah, it's. I know that. No, I don't have any bad. It only improved my opinion of the Irish Film Board, which I had no opinion before, but they produced a good film, so it improved my opinion of the Irish Film Board. So, which is probably also why Carl Geary is involved, because he was Irish born. He's American. He's American now, but he was born in Dublin, so that might be why some of the reasons why some of the people were picked is to okay, well, we have to have so many Irish born people in the film to make it qualify for Irish Film Board help or something. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, it's a good film done on a tight budget that does what it needs to do, does it very effectively. I haven't read the book. Obviously, I don't think any of us have read the book
No.
it's based on.
Yeah.
But so I can't speak on how closely it follows the source material, but it effectively does what it needs to do. It doesn't try and trick it up too much so it trips over itself, but it does exactly what it needs to do to tell the story it's telling in a nice way, in a good way, and nice way. It's a horror film, but it's
It's an engaging story with a good plot that isn't like so convoluted with plot twists that you just get bored halfway through because, oh, okay, the killer is actually the dude who's the killer's sister, but now he's the killer, whatever. I don't really watch a lot of horror movies, but
yeah, it's not my favorite genre either, but
it didn't really feel like a horror movie though.
yeah.
I mean, it felt a little B movie, but again, B movies aren't really horror movies.
Yeah,
watch Army of Darkness and try to be scared. Like, try to consider that a horror movie.
It's also a psychological horror movie, which that's a little different from the most of the things. And it was also on the budget it was doing. It did a very good job with what it was given. They produced a good film that's very entertaining, interesting, because it's pretty rare you get a film from the perspective of this, sociopath, and you get to see that's another small bit of this thing that it's not a small bit, but it's another part of this thing that's an interesting thing in that it leaves things a little bit open on, okay, well, is he really a serial killer or not and whatnot. He's you don't get to see that usually if you're going from the sociopath's POV. It's because they're chopping up people or something.
Yeah.
It's and so this
like
is
the one about Ted. I think it was Ted Bundy or something. The one that's starring Elijah Woods. I don't remember which movie it was, but there was one of the horror movies where he was the serial killer, and everything was shot from his POV.
Yeah. Usually when you get somebody like that in a film, and it's a horror movie, you're following them. And they're the villain. In this case, you have, it's sort of the tiger and lamb dichotomy works kind of almost, it works somewhat in a couple ways, because you got him and his wife, which the tiger and the lamb, but also this kid is also, he's not done anything wrong. So in that way, he is a lamb. He's not actually hurt anybody. He's scared some people, but he's not actually hurt anybody.
At the same time, who doesn't get those kind of urges? I mean, you don't do anything about them. You just like, God, I wish I could kill somebody, but that's illegal, so I'm not going to.
But he's also dealing with his internal tiger, his sociopathy and all that. And so his own tiger and his own lamb, because he's not done anything on the outside, but internally he's got all these problems to deal with that occasionally leak up to the surface, but he's not done anything.
Although it could be, the sociopathy could be derived from his father, because we never see him, but we do see that he holds animosity towards his father, and his sister and mother also hold animosity towards the dad. So it seems more like he's either just, I went out for fags and never came back, or he's an absentee father, or
It seems like the latter one with the gifts. Like, he sent the gifts, but they're not actually in there.
Yeah.
So it's like, that's a thing. Something else I was going to say.
So there's animosity towards the dad, which leads you to think maybe something about that has influenced his sociopathy.
But the other thing that I found interesting was it's a different way of looking at it. It's a mental process that works for him. because of the way they've chosen their main character, I would say. You have two main characters, but your POV character, he doesn't understand certain things because of the way his brain works. He doesn't process things in the same way that other people do. And so when he's trying to get this guy to leave town, or not do what he's doing, like he needs to think, well, what would keep him here, and it's what's keeping him here. And he's like, oh well, love, and and he figures out from that, oh, not intuitively but mechanically, he figures out, okay, well, if I did something to his wife, he's got nothing holding him here anymore, and maybe he'll leave. And so, like, that was an interesting little moment in his mind. Like, he almost did something to somebody, but like
he thought he killed her.
Yeah, he thought he did, but he didn't actually hurt anybody. For real.
Well,
like, he gets close a lot of times, but he doesn't actually ever.
He hurt her. He didn't kill her.
Yeah, he didn't.
Because he did bash her over the head.
Yeah, he hurt her, but he didn't kill her. So, like, he's
I love how oblivious she is to all of that. Also, I love his panda mask. That is just awesome, and I want one. But she's just like, that alarm clock just is so horrible. It's like, yeah, you didn't realize he bashed you over the head. Lloyd's character knew, and that sort of started the war between them, or temporary war, which, well, you went after someone I love, I'm going to go after someone you love. I'm going to go after your mom, which, again, sociopaths and psychopaths can love and can feel emotional connection, but it's not empathy so much as it's more of a, well, she's my mom, she takes care of me, she does this for me, she's, she does that. It's more of a rational love, a rational affection.
See if I can think of anything else that was interesting. So yeah, he did some wrong, but he didn't go all the way yet. And so
I think it was the therapist that I recognized.
Okay.
But yeah.
Which was Carl Geary.
Or I thought I'd recognized, or I don't know. The first time I saw this was years ago.
Yeah, let's see. What did Geary do? Nadja, Gold in the Streets, Montana, Trance, The Book of Stars, Hamlet, Happy Here and Now, Coney Island Baby, Mimic 3, Sentinel, Timbuktu, Satellite, Stag Night, The Burrowers, Archaeology of a Woman, Jimmy's Hall, Experimenter, and then television he was Painted Lady, Sex and the City, Esther, Hysteria, the Def Leppard Story, Hide and Seek, and Gravity. Which, interesting, the last thing that's on his filmography right now is this movie.
Wow.
He's still alive, apparently.
I was about to say, was this an elaborate snuff film?
No, he.
And again, we saw with him and the therapist, like he killed the therapist, and the kids like, why did you do that? Because the therapist was helping him. The therapist was serving a purpose, and so he had affection for him, and you have a role to play in my life aspect, which is how sociopaths and psychopaths kind of view love. It's what role do you play? Where do you sit in my life? I am not speaking from experience, just I read a lot.
But what was I say? Yeah.
That's
So
totally not
that's
something.
all. He owns a bar in downtown Manhattan called the Scratcher, and previously owned another club, the original Tiny Cafe Cine on St. Mark's Place in the East Village, where he waited on tables alongside Jeff Buckley. But yeah, yeah, he played Horatio in Hamlet. Seems like a good fit for him, but yeah, he doesn't have a lot. He doesn't have a lot of credits, but this may just be poorly updated, for all I know.
I usually use IMDb.
Yeah, well, it's already out on the Wikipedia page for it,
Yeah.
so it's like, blick. But anyway, any final thoughts on this, or do we have anything else?
Let me think. Did they not have like DNA testing to like check the corpse for like somebody's DNA or whatever?
Keep in mind, he might not have shown DNA. That oil was like his blood, basically.
Yeah, if he's an alien,
Yeah.
he may not have DNA that makes sense to a DNA sequencing. Even on top of that, this is a small town. They don't have like,
They would have to send it into a bigger city, which probably
it would have taken longer than the
something,
length of this
which-
movie takes in real time.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got a fair point there.
And they see the pattern. It would be more probable to use fingerprint testing, which, well, not completely accurate and not like, oh my gosh, that it's about a little better than a polygraph. At least it gives you some point of reference, you know?
True.
Yeah, but even if you got the fingerprints off the victims, even if you managed to,
But I guess he wasn't using his fingers. He was using his like weird claw thing to kill them and chop up their bodies with a chainsaw and rip out their organs to replace them.
Yeah, and so, but even if you manage to nail that this guy, he got his fingerprints at the scene of the crime, did all that, your prosecutor's supposed to prove that this little old man who can barely stand up throttled these, killed these people in cold blood. It's the sweet man who nobody has anything to say against. This frail, kindly old man managed to attack these people and kill them. Like, you're supposed to prove that in court.
And
like you're more likely to
double doubt.
Yeah, it's like, they'd probably tell him, like, in court, it's like, can you lift this? No.
Yeah.
No, I'm an old man. I can't lift more than a few pounds. Like, I can lift the paper, I can lift the remote, but I can't do much more.
Which is why he was taking the law into his own hands. He was trying to find a way to get rid of him without having to deal with the cops, because you saw what happened when he called the cops. Dude murdered the cops too.
Yeah.
And then blamed the barber, which that's what you get when you piss off a demon's wife. When you flirt with a demon's wife.
Yeah. Let's see. I think we've basically covered everything. It was a fun movie. Well done for what it's for what its budget was, they did everything they needed to do to make this film, and it shows low budget films can still produce good films. They can still produce a good story, and not everything has to be $300 million to make a good film. Any other things?
I think. I like how embalming fluid is nice and pink.
Okay, I think we've rung this out for what it was. It was a good movie, interesting low budget movie, and that's about it.